brainstorming some ideas for the new Spotlight. You got anything?
Just give me a second. I need to take my jacket off. Guys. What's going on, guys? Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you the top 5 soccer cleat trends that I absolutely hate. I don't think that anyone will disagree with me in saying that soccer cleats have changed a lot over the last 10 years. And if we look at the last 3 years exclusively, there have been a lot of new concepts and technologies introduced into the soccer cleat world that have changed things even more drastically than they've ever changed before. Because of all these new concepts, we're getting more and more trends in regards to how soccer cleats are being made and designed. Are all of them good? In my opinion, no, and that's what we're going to be discussing in this video. Please keep in mind that all of these opinions are based on my own experiences with all of the shoes that I'll be talking about in this video. And also, as always with these kind of opinion-based videos, feel free to leave your opinion on some of these topics down below in the comment section. I don't necessarily expect everyone to agree with me 100%, but I definitely think that there are certain things trending in soccer cleats at the moment that are popular for the wrong reasons, or perhaps due to some big misconceptions that I hope to clear up with the info in this video. So again, feel free to share your opinions down below in the comments. And if you guys enjoy the top 5 series on my channel, want to see it continue happening, don't forget to support this one with a like. Number 1 is the fact that leather soccer cleats are slowly but surely being phased out. And I think there's a couple different reasons for this. The biggest reason being the fact that these brands are trying to appeal to the younger generation of kids. And that younger generation is growing up looking at and desiring a completely different style of shoe rather than something more traditional or what's deemed to be old school if it has a leather upper. And brands like Nike, they offer a Nike Tiempo Legend 7, which is my personal favorite soccer cleat on the market at the moment. It's really, really good. And I hope Nike continues with the Tiempo line because it's done really well for them. They also have the Nike Premier. Adidas has the Copa Mundial, which will always be in existence as long as Adidas is still in business, which I don't see them going out of business anytime soon, but that's not really appealing to the younger generation of kids. And then they have the Copa line, the modern Copa line, specifically the Copa 18.1, which is an excellent boot, but you can see Adidas themselves not really giving that any kind of marketing attention. They have plenty of endorsed athletes that I'm sure would be perfectly happy to wear a Copa 18.1 or some kind of modified version of the shoe, but they choose intentionally not to put any of their pros in that shoe. They'd rather give them a custom leather variation of the Predator or the X or something that looks like one of their 3 modern lines rather than the Copa line, which is a really interesting decision. And then Puma, they don't really have much on offer in regards to leather shoes. The Puma 117.1, but I don't think there's too many people running to the store to buy those. And then obviously the smaller brands, there's such a small part of the market that again, that big group, that big buyers group of the younger generation of kids, they want something from Nike, Adidas, and Puma. So what brands like Mizuno, Diadora, Pantofolo, all brands that are making really good quality leather shoes, what they do is almost insignificant because eventually it will get to a point where they're gonna have to copy what the big brands are doing in order to stay somewhat relevant. So again, I think the appeal of a leather shoe in 2017 to that younger generation is just not very big. So that's why they're kind of getting away from it. You also have to consider that soccer cleats have gotten to a point where they're changing so quickly now that evolution in the next big thing is kind of what these big brands are going after. And when you look at something with a leather upper, I feel like a lot of these brands probably are of the opinion that they've done everything they can do. With leather uppers, the big kind of innovation was the introduction of rubber elements. The Predator line went on for a long time. It's back now, but no longer leather. The T90 line from Nike, this is kind of what the evolution of leather shoes turned into. And then once that popularity died off, we're now on to synthetics, we're now on to knitted. And I think with those types of materials, there is a lot more in terms of what these brands can do when it comes to variety for future models. So I don't necessarily think leather shoes are gonna go away entirely, but we are gonna see less and less of them as time goes on. The third thing you have to consider is that leather is actually gonna be a more expensive material for these brands to actually manufacture these shoes rather than making their own synthetics and their own knitted materials out of basically plastic. So that's something that also needs to be strongly considered here. But I don't necessarily blame the brands for this particular trend. I hope that we always get some kind of a quality leather offering, but just know that down the line, we're probably only ever going to get one option when it comes to a leather shoe from a big brand, rather than multiple options like we've perhaps had in the past. This is a sock, something that everybody watching this video has worn at some point in time. This particular sock, as you can see, has a little bit of an extended piece, a collar if you will, that goes just above your ankle. You can buy socks where they're cut below your ankle, you can buy socks where they run halfway up your calf, you can buy socks that go all the way up to your knees, a soccer sock if you will. What I can tell you is that nobody has ever bought a sock like this or any kind of sock that covers your ankle and thought, hey, these are going to give me some kind of ankle support or improve my ability to perform. But when Nike, or any brand for that matter, puts an extension piece, basically like a sock that covers your ankle, all of a sudden, people think that this is some kind of major performance breakthrough. There's gonna be some kind of crazy ankle support. This is so much better than anything we've seen before. Which brings us to trend number 2, mid-cut soccer cleats, which I'll say right off the bat, I don't have an issue with. I don't think that mid-cuts are hurting the performance of soccer cleats at all. Is it my favorite thing in the world? Absolutely not. And in a side-by-side comparison, when you're talking about a mid-cut version of the shoe and a low-cut version, or even just generally mids versus lows, I tend to find low-cut shoes a little bit more comfortable in the heel area. But again, that's more of a matter of personal opinion. However, my issue with mid-cut soccer cleats are the misconceptions around them. If we use the Superfly 4 as an example, which is one of the first mid-cut and one of the first knitted soccer cleats that was readily available to the public, nowhere in the marketing material from Nike did they say that this collar offered any kind of ankle support or any kind of real performance benefit. All of the marketing around this particular concept was based around the feel of the shoe. The fact that the upper flowed from your foot to your ankle to your leg more seamlessly than what a low-cut shoe would have on offer. And to a certain extent, that's somewhat true from a feel standpoint, depending on how much you're thinking about your soccer cleats. But if we're 100% honest with ourselves, when you put on a mid-cut soccer cleat for the first time, you'll notice the collar for the first 20 minutes just because there is something wrapping your ankle that wouldn't normally be there, and you're just thinking about it. But after that 20 minutes, once you've gotten used to the way they feel, you forget about it entirely. There's no restrictiveness because of the collar. There's no ankle support because of this collar. The collar has nothing to do even with the lockdown of the shoe. You could cut it off entirely, not that I would necessarily recommend doing that, and the fit of the shoe would still be exactly the same. It has nothing to do with lockdown. It has nothing to do with performance, which is where the misconception really comes in, because people seem to think that you should pay the extra money for a mid-cut soccer cleat because that's the latest and greatest thing, and it's going to be performance-wise more beneficial than something that does not have a collar, which simply is not the truth. Now, have companies kind of come out and debunked the fact that people seem to think that there's performance benefit to this? No, they've kind of just ridden that wave to the point where we're actually getting low-end models available in mid-cut and low-cut variations. Nike especially is doing this, where they actually charge you more money for the mid-cut takedown models that actually don't fit as well as the low-cut variations. But people, because they want mid-cut so bad, they're willing to spend that extra money because, again, they are thinking that they're getting some kind of performance benefit. So here's my advice, because mid-cut shoes are not going away. They're gonna stick around for a very long time. If you have the money for a mid-cut shoe and you really like the way that they look, you like the way that they feel, by all means, buy a mid-cut shoe. I'm not saying to stay away from them by any means at all. But if you are on a tighter budget and you are of the opinion that mid-cuts are actually better, just know that that is not true whatsoever. Buy a soccer cleat that you can afford, buy the best shoe you can get for the amount of money that you have to spend, regardless of whether or not that's a mid or a low. All I'm saying is you shouldn't actually stretch and spend more money to buy a mid over a low cut because there really isn't any performance benefit if that's kind of what you're assuming. Trend number 3 is the fact that soccer cleats are getting lighter and lighter, which doesn't sound like a bad thing, but there are some downsides to the fact that soccer shoes are pretty much all light across the board now. And the one big thing I think that impacts is durability. I think if you're in your 20s or even a little bit older than that, and you've worn soccer cleats from 10 years ago versus a soccer cleat in 2017, you've probably made the observation that soccer cleats just don't last as long as they used to. They quite simply are not as durable. And one of the big reasons as to why that is because brands are really trying to make the shoes as light as possible, which means thinner materials in general, which in turn is going to make for a less durable product. High-end shoes going back 10 years, they could weigh 11 ounces, they could weigh 8 ounces, they could weigh 6 ounces. There was a good amount of variety in terms of weight across the board, which not only impacted the feel of the shoes on your feet from a weight standpoint, it also impacted the feel of the shoe from a touch and performance characteristic standpoint, which is the second thing that weight impacts. If you make all the shoes as light as possible, you're gonna lose the amount of play you have in terms of creating a different experience. I think if you look at a brand like Nike right now, their top 3 lines, the Magista line, the Hypervenom, as well as the Mercurial line, if you look at the Superfly, the Obra, and the Phantom 3, they're all knitted uppers, they're all mid-cut, and to a certain extent, they all offer somewhat of a similar experience. Yes, the fit is different, yes, the performance characteristics are different, but they're all about the same weight, and they're all made from the same amount of material. So we are losing out on that little bit of variety that we used to have going back 10 years versus what we have right now, where brands feel so pressured to make a shoe as light as possible, where if it isn't 7 ounces or less, people are just not going to be interested in it. And again, it's kind of the fault of the big brands because they've made this the trend. I think you probably could fault Adidas on this one for the F50 Adizero in 2010, which by the way, when that shoe first came out, a lot of people saw that original F50 Adizero and just thought, hey, it's kind of plasticky. Yes, it's super light, but I didn't necessarily like it. But eventually that trend really caught on, and that impacted soccer cleats moving forward from 2010 to where we are right now. Will this particular trend end anytime soon? Probably not, because again, I don't think the younger generation of kids is interested in a shoe that weighs 9, 10, or 11 ounces. Anything that has kind of a more padded feel to it. Also, the fact that you do make shoes as light as possible means that there's less and less protection. So when someone asks me in the comment section of one of my videos, what do I recommend for something that has a little bit more of a protective feel to it? There really aren't too many options other than something like a Copa Mundial or something with a leather upper that at least has some kind of padding to it, because pretty much everything else out there is on the thinner side because of the weight restrictions that these companies are kind of abiding by. So is lighter better? To a certain extent, yes, but the fact that everything is super light across the board now, I don't necessarily think is the greatest thing in the world. Trend number 4 is the fact that soccer cleats are getting more and more expensive. Now, a lot of people automatically would want to just blame brands like Nike and Adidas for charging so much money for their products. They're just greedy, they want as much money as possible, which I don't think you can really fault any company for. They exist for the sake of making money, and they create products that are obviously very desirable. So they're gonna make that product as expensive as they possibly can, where people are still going to be willing to pay those prices. I think honestly, the majority of the blame for these high prices that we have right now fall onto us, the consumers, the people who are actually willing to pay these crazy prices. Because guess what, guys? If you didn't buy the shoes at $300, then none of the prices would be that high. It's all based on supply and demand. And I think if we had 2 shoes to blame for these high prices that we have right now, it's the Superfly 4 and the Magista Obra 1. Those 2 shoes launched at $275. And obviously they were super exciting given the fact that they were knitted uppers and mid-cut as well, kind of the first 2 to be readily available to the public. And basically for the first year of those 2 shoes being available in multiple different colorways, they sold out really quickly. In the first couple of days, you had a hard time finding your size because they were selling that quickly. What did that tell Nike? Hey, we can sell these shoes at $275, no problem at all. We should make other shoes that are knitted, we should make other shoes that are mid-cut, and hey, maybe even in the next generation, let's bump it to $300, which told Adidas, hey, if we do the same thing, mid-cuts with knitted uppers, we can also charge $300 for our shoe, which is why you have so many different options at the $300 price point now. And in 2017, I think it's safe to say that a lot of these really expensive models aren't selling quite as well as they did back in 2014, which is very likely going to yield some kind of a price cut come the next generation of these shoes, where they are going to be a little bit cheaper. We already saw kind of a hint at this from Nike in the form of the limited edition Flyknit Ultra, which was only $250, not cheap, but certainly a lot cheaper than $300. So I think if anything, we're actually on a path to where soccer cleats are going to get a little bit less expensive in this next generation that gets introduced. I could be wrong on that, but again, the prices are very much determined by the consumers. If you're willing to pay and consistently pay these high prices, the prices are going to stay high. But if you don't buy them because you think they're too expensive, if the sales reflect that, they're going to lower the prices. And finally, trend number 5 that I'm not a huge fan of is laceless soccer cleats, which at the moment is pretty much exclusive to the Adidas brand. If you've heard me talk about this before, you probably know what I'm about to say, but if you've never seen one of my videos or heard me talk about laceless boots, listen to what I'm about to say because there's some pretty serious logic that's pretty hard to argue with. So, laceless soccer cleats. You have the Nemesis 17 Plus, the Predator 18 Plus, and to a lesser extent, just because it's not readily available everywhere, the Adidas Glitch. These are 3 shoes that are at the top price points from the Adidas brand. Why do you spend the extra money on a top-end model in the first place? 1, because it's the best of the best in terms of quality, but 2, and to me the most important reason, because you're getting the best product when it comes to fit, feel, and overall performance. You don't need a top-end model, but you want a top-end model, especially if you're playing a lot. It is the best experience you're gonna get from a pair of soccer cleats most of the time. In the case of these laceless models, you're not actually getting the best experience you can get from a top-end Adidas boot. And Adidas is basically telling you this directly by the fact that they offer the 17.1 and the 18.1 versions of all their laceless boots. If this truly was the best, why wouldn't it just be the only top-end model? Why would they make a Nemesis 17.1 that's the exact same upper, but with a lacing system? Why would they make a Predator 18.1 that's the exact same upper, but with a lacing system? The simple answer to that question is this laceless thing is not for everybody, and that isn't necessarily the best either. Think about this for a second. When you have a laceless system, what's really the benefit here? The fact that there aren't any laces? Is that going to improve your ability to control the ball? No. Is that going to create for a cleaner striking surface? Maybe a little bit, but is that really noticeable? No. So other than that, what exactly is the laceless system benefiting? Well, it's not actually benefiting anything. There are more downsides than there are upsides. When you have a laceless system, you lose out on adjustability, and fit is everything in footwear in general, but especially when you're talking about soccer cleats. Once you put these on, any laceless model, there's no adjustability. You can't make them tighter, you can't make them looser. The way that they fit is the way that they'll fit. And even if they fit you really well out of the box, it needs to be taken into consideration that as you wear them, as with any soccer cleat, they are going to stretch a little bit. So just because they fit you good from brand new, they're gonna get a little bit wider as you wear them in, so they might not fit so well down the line. And again, because there's nothing to adjust, you can't make them tighter once they've expanded a little bit. The second, and to me the biggest thing to consider, which is really my main issue with a lot of these laceless models, is all of these laceless systems are elasticated. And the reason for that is so you can actually get your foot in and out of the shoe more easily. They don't want to make it an epic struggle, although the Adidas Glitch is really, really hard to put on and take off, given that you have proper sizing. However, because it does have that ability to stretch under more intense movements, once you start sprinting, a quick change of direction, a plant for a strike, this actually stretches with the shoe on your foot. Because of that, you end up with kind of a free float type feel inside of the shoe. Your foot's able to slide around. You lose lockdown, you lose responsiveness, you lose stability to a certain extent. Your heel can slip depending on how much the shoe is actually stretching. And that's something that simply would not happen if you just had a lacing system in the middle that you could securely fasten, lock your foot in place. Nothing's going to stretch while you play. So for those reasons, that's why I'm not a huge fan of laceless boots from Adidas. So take this information for what it is. Do I think Adidas is going to stray away from laceless boots anytime soon? Probably not. It's done really well for them from a marketing perspective. But if you truly are after the best of the best in terms of the performance characteristics of a top-end Adidas model, I don't really think that the laceless models are the ones to go for. Anyways, guys, those are my top 5 soccer cleat trends that I just don't like very much, why I hate them, and what I think we could do to resolve some of these issues. As always, if you have any thoughts of your own on some of these topics or another soccer cleat trend that you're not such a big fan of, leave it down below in the comments. We'll get a big discussion going. That's what I really like about these types of videos. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to support it with a like. Any questions, as always, leave that down below in the comments as well. And I definitely will do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, thanks for watching.